That is the first song, the first hymn that I ever learned. And it is the first hymn that I ever sang as a solo in church. It makes me sad that I don't have good breath to sing it today. It is such a gorgeous hymn. I can remember as a little girl lying on my grandmother's lap, and she would play with my hair. She had a habit, my grandmother, of probably many mothers and grandmothers do this, but she liked curls to be neat and tidy. So I would lie on her lap and she'd lick her fingers and try and get the curls to go all in the right way. But she almost always would sing that hymn. It's a hymn, it's a song, it's a reading that brings us comfort. It makes us feel like we are enveloped in God's love, in God's arms, and nothing could possibly go wrong in that space. But I have to tell you, I have sort of a love-hate relationship with both the 23rd Psalm and with our lesson, our gospel lesson from today. I love it, of course, like all of us love it, because it does give us comfort. I love it also because my very first Sunday in this church was Good Shepherd Sunday some years ago. Sometimes it feels like a lot of years ago. Sometimes it feels like just a few. I love it because it is one of the first ways I learned to understand who Jesus Christ was and who God is in my life. You know, probably many of us learned the same thing. Learned that early on. Probably many of us in Sunday school at some point in time or another made little lambs with cotton balls and toothpicks and far too much Elmer's glue and took them home to Mommy and Daddy and tried to detach them from our glued-on fingers. Probably all of us have been in some church or another at some time in our lives that somewhere had a beautiful stained glass window depicting Jesus Christ as the Good Shepherd. And we can close our eyes and we can see what that image is. We can see Jesus with the lily-white lamb on his shoulders. Now let's pause for a minute and just think about that. Have any of you been around young lambs or goats? Yeah. How likely do you think that was, that he got the lamb to lie there peacefully on his shoulder with his head tucked down?
Well, he was God.
You have a point there. And how likely is it that this lamb was lily white? But here we have this picture of Jesus with this lamb calmly resting on his shoulder, and we have Jesus in these gorgeous white flowing robes. Now hence begins my hate relationship with this scripture. Have any of you been around herds of sheep, or in sheep yards, or out tending flocks by day? Let's think about this for a minute. What color are sheep really? They're kind of a dirty brown, gray color. To get a really white wool from sheep, you have to bleach the wool. They don't come in that color. And sheep, well, they're not amongst the smartest of God's creatures. So they tend to wander off and into all sorts of things, and in brambles and down ditches. And if you've been with them all day long, in the midst of them, as shepherds often are, it's not like the shepherd stands off at a distance and says to the flock of sheep, okay, at the next intersection, turn left, please. And they all do it. The shepherd, along with the dogs, are in the midst of these sheep, and so not only is it unlikely that the sheep was lily white, it's very unlikely that Jesus' clothing was clean and pressed and tidy. And And yet, we love that image of Jesus, clean and pressed and tidy, with a nicely behaved lamb on his shoulders. Now, there's another image of Jesus Christ that we all take comfort from these scriptures, and that is of Jesus Christ leading us, guiding us into the right pathway. Now, have any of you seen a shepherd's crook? It's usually tall, curved, very sturdy piece of wood. And it's crooked on the end for a specific purpose. It's crooked on the end because the shepherd hooks the sheep by the neck and pulls them in the direction they want them to go. Remember, I said sheep aren't very smart. And if that doesn't work, the shepherd flips the crook around and uses the other end to prod the sheep where the shepherd wants the sheep to go. And yet, we all like to hold on to this image of this person who is gently leading us and guiding us to get us to do the things that we ought to do. And what about those sheep? They just don't go anywhere very fast. Have you ever been in a traffic jam caused by sheep?
Yes.
I have too. Took a long time, didn't it? Yes, I was in Ireland. And they block the road, and they stay there until one of them decides to scamper off somewhere else. No matter how much the shepherd prods, no matter how much the shepherd pushes them, no matter how much the dogs nip at their heels and bark, they're not going to go until they are darn good and ready to go. Sounds like a lot of human beings, I know, actually. Me at the first of the list. And yet, we want to hold on to this image of the flock coming and gathering around Jesus Christ, the shepherd, and meekly and mildly walking along at a nice pace to where we ought to go. But I want to think for a minute about how the people who heard Jesus say, I am the good shepherd. I am the good shepherd. He does not say, I am a good shepherd. I am one of the good shepherds. I am a shepherd. He says, I am the good shepherd. He's very specific about that, and they would have heard it in a specific way. Now, the first thing that would have come to their mind would have been Moses. They would have understood that Jesus was casting himself in the very same light as Moses, who also was a shepherd, and who led his people out of bondage and captivity through the wilderness to the promised land. They would have heard Jesus saying, I, like Moses, am a rebel, and I am going to lead you from your captivity to the places of promise that God has already set up for you. They also would have heard Jesus speaking of himself as one from the line of David. David, too, was a shepherd, shepherding flocks before he ascended to the throne and became king. And they would have heard Jesus saying that I am God, as Yahweh is the shepherd of the flock of Israel. Now, when Jesus makes his I am statements, and he makes many of them, he gets the authorities absolutely inflamed. And they're terribly upset by this statement, I am the good shepherd. But it's not because Jesus is comparing himself to some lowly, dirty, dingy, covered with something that's not dirt but looks like dirt shepherd. It's because Jesus is saying, I am he. I am Moses. I am David, King David. He could have stopped there. They could have accused him of treason right there. But he doesn't. He goes one step further and says, I am God. And I, your God, will lead you to abundance, to life, to living water, to green pastures. And your cup will overflow. Those are tremendously powerful statements that Jesus makes. Tremendously powerful statements that Jesus makes. And I have to wonder, and this again is part of my love-hate relationship with this text, I have to wonder why we don't want to claim that piece of who Jesus is. Why do we want to hold on to this Jesus, meek and mild, with the lamb on his shoulders, and neat and tidy and white trimmed, and gently guiding us along? Why don't we want to claim the Jesus who is so powerful, the Jesus who is God? And I don't have an answer for that question. But I'm going to leave the question with you to ponder throughout the next week. And I wonder what you will find in your own life is the answer to